Rick, how is your 2023 going so far?
It's been really incredible. I've seen so many more people in the streets, and restaurants are getting busy, and it's really nice to see the hustle and bustle of the city life returning.
The biggest news for me is actually China lifted COVID restrictions on international arrivals starting from January the 8th. The number of international flights will gradually increase. I think it's great news for people who like to travel, like me.
China has entered a new stage in COVID response. For people like me who have lived through the pandemic, there's one word that I heard more than any other word, and that is fight. China has fought hard to save lives, like in the heroic city of Wuhan, which I did visit. Incredible.
Right, fight in Chinese is actually 抗. In 2020, before we had a deep knowledge about the virus and, before any vaccine, the resolute and extraordinary action taken were proven crucial for keeping the virus at bay. China has tackled over 100 cluster infections since 2020, fighting different variants of the virus like Delta and Omicron strains. In fact, in the past 3 years, China has kept its severe COVID cases and death rates among the lowest in the world.
So I think fighting is the hallmark of China's battle against COVID. And through the process, I have seen the fighting spirit in the Chinese people.
Canceling flights and trains departing from the city, suspending the subway, the buses, the whole transportation system in a record time, that was more than extraordinary. Because I cannot think of any other country in the world which could react to this issue so fast. I think it's not only reasonable, but it's also the right thing to do. China controlled the situation very efficiently, preventing what could have become a high casualty rate.
It was like a battle. Not only Wuhan who was battling with this epidemic, rest of China, it was also helping Wuhan.
One of the things that impressed me at the time was that in Wuhan, where there was a major outbreak, the Chinese government was able to quickly put up, I believe, 2 hospitals in rather record time, 10 days or so.
I would like to give credit for the Chinese citizens because, the resilience and the courage that they have demonstrated is absolutely amazing.
What can you do when a threat is coming? Well, prevention is the first defense, and China was amazing. We had health apps on our cell phones. Also, COVID testing free of charge on a mass scale. Safety was always key. China puts people and their lives first, all along.
Yes, prevention is truly a key word here in Chinese, 防, to stop the virus from spreading and affecting more people, especially when it was quite contagious and harmful to life and health. China put all out efforts to provide free vaccination and testing. Communities would also offer all kinds of assistance to help residents feel safe.
Well, we made many videos in the past years, and at that time we wore masks because we followed the COVID protocol at the time. For instance, when we went to Shanghai to cover CIIE, and also when we went to Hong Kong and we covered the anniversary.
Yes, on all the subways across China in the past 3 years, everyone has worn a mask. Everybody was being responsible. At the end of the day, I think safety is what matters.
We can see how well it controlled the spread from one building to another building, district to district, or even city to city. This helped to avoid a much worse case scenario that could have happened.
And doing rapid testing, wearing masks, spreading awareness, and letting people know that don't worry, we all are together. We will win this fight.
Parce que justement, il y a 1,4 milliard d'habitants. Donc les mesures, forcément, on ne peut pas prendre les mêmes mesures comme un pays pour.
Now in China, given uneven development, rural versus dense urban populations, a substantial elderly population, some estimates hold that failure to contain COVID in China might have produced 10 million deaths.
I think vaccinations themselves have been extremely useful in reducing at least the degree of sickness and probably even death that could occur from getting infected.
What we've seen in China is an unprecedented public health achievement. While we know that the political, economic, and social controls of cost are high, we know that failing costs even more.
I am aware that COVID has had an impact on the economy, and this has happened worldwide. China's approach has been achieving the greatest prevention and control at the lowest price.
Yes, so coordination in Chinese, 同, is another key word here. The Chinese government has been working consistently, to coordinate epidemic prevention and control with economic and social development.
It's really a classic example of finding the equilibrium among multiple objectives. That's really Chinese wisdom.
To better coordinate, China has actually tried to avoid excessive prevention measures on local levels, minimize the impact of epidemic control on major projects, boost the efficiency of economic activities, such as shortening the clearance time for cargo aircraft. The Chinese government also rolled out targeted supportive policies to help businesses and sectors most in need.
The good record of China's epidemic control has really built a safe and stable environment for China's development.
Clearly, the Chinese government has placed the health and well-being of people over pure economic growth. So I think the challenge with any government, not just China, any government, is trying to balance the consequential effects of not having a good economy or controlling too much, say, on COVID.
I think China is doing a great job in this regard, granting access to tax deduction schemes and rent subsidies, as well as economic stimulus packages. Launched all played an important role. I believe that we will see a very quick social-economic recovery.
Because China has responsibly managed the outbreak, it was not forced to take desperate actions like the U.S. did. Instead, China's efforts, and especially the recovery efforts, have been much more reasonable and rational and sustainable, with better carryover effects at home and abroad.
A series of measures have also been rolled out to further optimize China's COVID response since November last year. And most recently, the management of COVID has been downgraded from Class A to Class B.
So the priority has gone from preventing infection to the caring of health and preventing severe cases. So I think the optimization is very important.
Yes, I totally agree. I think it can be referred to as the Chinese word you, which means fine-tuning. China has kept adjusting its COVID response, based on the evolving situations and a scientific assessment of the pandemic, including the weakening of the virus.
The virus is a mutable organism. It only makes sense to keep a close eye in the pathogenicity and the toxicity of the virus, and then react accordingly to those changes.
Now we're in a situation where the virus the infectious rate of the current variation, the Omicron variant, is much, much higher. Now that we have, good solid vaccinations, and we also know that this variant doesn't produce as much sickness and as serious a sickness as the original variants did. I think those those policies make sense. I know that there are people around the world and governments around the world that are currently critical of such a rapid reopening, but I find that a little bit disingenuous, because not so long ago those same people were also calling for China to open up.
As I mentioned before, businesses are going very strong in Beijing, and transportation is nearly back to normal again.
Yes, I'm really glad to see the changes around us. I guess back to normal, or if I use one Chinese word, 长, is a lot of people's New Year wishes.
I think that is what we are experiencing, but the government is still cautious. Like in my community, people are encouraged to be vaccinated, especially elderly people, and I think that's really necessary.
Yes, the supplies of drugs and medicines are also being increased, so is the number of ICU beds. A tiered diagnosis and treatment system is also being rolled out. All of this would lay a solid foundation for returning to normality.
The extraordinary efforts of China should be respected, and it has not been an easy journey for anybody. Tough challenges remain, but people are holding on with great fortitude.
Yes, like what President Xi said in his New Year address, the light of hope is right in front of us.
I really like that saying.
It's always difficult to make predictions today overall, but I'm very, very, very optimistic, honestly speaking, because I am persuaded that the new normal, this new phase, will have a positive impact on the economy overall.
Given what was known at the time and the understanding at the time and what vaccinations were available at the time, I think the Chinese government has done the best that could be expected.
But some countries look at China through a perverse lens. They fail to directly acknowledge, one-to-one, their failures versus China's successes, because they politicize everything about China ideologically.
Au niveau de la Chine, c'était, on va dire, la vie en premier. Donc voilà, c'est ce qui a la grosse différence qu'il y a eu entre la Chine et les autres pays occidentaux. C'est que la Chine a continué on va dire, dans la même direction pour essayer de protéger au maximum la santé des personnes.